It is a great privilege for me to introduce Jeremiah Rauwolf. He has started to serve the education sector at the age of 20. He is inspired by the desire to serve and help others in best possible way, whatever he could be. He served to the education and professional people over a decade for social and charitable causes in Italy and overseas. He has started Arcade to educate people on sales, marketing, and mortgage finance and asset management to conduct and assist other entrepreneurs and other business owners to optimize their business and increase the profit to better to serve their families and realize their dreams. He is also the newborn author with his first book being launched at our global summit today. On behalf of Untitled Chapter Science College and Tatti, I welcome you, sir, for this session. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, sir. And a brief note about Jeremiah personally. In a very short span of time, Tatti and Jeremiah have become a very good friend. He walks you through a process of what is to be done as a businessman, through his books in an 8-way strategy. He has written it in a very, very detailed way, giving importance to all the 8 key strategies for upcoming businessman or for an upcoming entrepreneur to make sure he's generating a lot of revenue. And this book, we are happy to launch it at our Global Summit 2020, which we will be attaching it with their certificates, which will be sent out tonight. Thank you, Jeremiah, from the bottom of our hearts for giving us this opportunity. And it's yours now.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie. Thanks for all the work that you and Joshua have put together to offer this wonderful summit to all those in attendance. I've really enjoyed every day and all of the speakers. It's been absolutely marvelous, and I'm sure most of you have also benefited as well. So one of the first things I want to talk about, well, first of all, before I even get started, I'd like to ask you, each and every one of you, to please do me a favor. If your video's not on, turn it on, because I want to be able to see you. And if you're a note taker, drop the pen, please. Just for this one talk, just drop the pen and let me open your heart and let's just talk. Let's just. What I'd like to do is start with the holiday that most of you are familiar with. That here in the U.S. we celebrated yesterday as a country. Now I hate to break it to you though, most people even in our own country misunderstand this holiday. What do I mean? So July 4th, everyone calls Independence Day, right? This great day of independence, fireworks and everything. Everyone's like, yay, America, free country, right? Well, not quite. So yes, obviously, there's a lot of wonderful things that came about, but people misunderstand what exactly we are celebrating. We're not celebrating the beginning of freedom. This is really important. We're not celebrating on the 4th of July, the beginning of freedom. If you go back in history, what we found then was something and kind of analogous to what we have now. What do we have? Not only in the US, but in the world. We have struggle, confusion, pain. We have our own personal strife maybe in our personal lives, right? We have our own, I mean, right now, look, I haven't even had a haircut and look at this, it's terrible. It's been because all the barber shops are closed, So, we all have different levels of struggle that we're going through right now in the midst of this pandemic, the global economy shifts, financial struggles, economic struggles, you name it. Very similar to what the founding fathers of our country were going through when July 4th happened. So what was it? It was a declaration. I like to call it Declaration Day because the Declaration of Independence is what came to be. Now, the Declaration is a firm purpose of amendment. It's something that a group of men who saw the plight and the suffering of their brothers and sisters, and they said, you know what? Out of this struggle, we're going to set our sights on our goal. We're going to fix that declaration from the Latin, to make clear, to clearly identify or indicate, right? So they're indicating and identifying the goal, where they want to be as a nation, right? So now then it was transformed then from just mere struggle to a struggle with purpose. It transformed from just a mere struggle with this act of declaration to a struggle with purpose. Now, if you remember Michelle the other day, I think it was the first day, she was talking to us about finding our North Star, finding our purpose, having a vision and having direction. Adding that to a struggle is what happens when we make a declaration, when we stand firm and say, that is where I'm going. So for your life, for your business, for your family, for your town, for your village, for your country, for your heart, for your education, all of that, what's your declaration? Yesterday, we celebrated the American Declaration. 2 years ago, I celebrated my declaration. When are you going to celebrate yours if you haven't yet? Something I want you to consider. What is your declaration? Write it down, sign it in blood. I'm just kidding. Sign it, seal it, and set it away someplace you can see it and remember it. Now, one thing that's beautiful is if we go back to ancient Greeks, you know, Aristotle, this old wise guy, you know, he talked about the unreflected life is not worth living. If we go through our lives without a declaration, what are we? Just one scroll away from the next social media post? Just one Netflix or TV show away from the next? What meaning does our life have without a declaration, right? So he also said that the first in intention is last in execution. What does that mean? It means the very first thing, in order to even start, in order to get to my relatives in the next village over, or the Starbucks at the corner, right? Whatever it is, I have to know where I'm going first before I can get on the right road in the right vehicle to get there. So even though my intention is out there, it's going to be the last thing that comes to be, which shouldn't be a discouragement, but an encouragement. That's where we're focused. So, okay. Another ancient, they were called the Desert Fathers because they're a father of a whole cultural movement, but in the early 1st and 2nd century, they lived out in the desert, totally austere, living off of crickets and honey or whatever, I don't even know, but it was a really unbelievable lifestyle that a lot of us outside of our village, our town, our city, our family, away from everybody, just by themselves for prayer and study and meditation and all this stuff. One of my favorites of these men was called St. John Climacus. Okay, Climacus is called the ladder, but he wrote this book called The Divine Ladder. One of the lines in there I just want to share with you because I read it years ago and it has stayed with me ever since. And I think it's a great example of what Joshua told us yesterday. Joshua told us yesterday, if you remember in the very beginning, he said that failure is an important part of success. It's not something that we move beyond and ignore and are successful anyways. No, it is an integral part. And you know, some of you may be familiar with Einstein's statement. He said, I'm not smarter than anybody else. I just stick with problems longer. So this John Climacus guy, one of the things he said is that there are two kinds of heroes in this world. One is the man who fights through a battle unscathed, untouched by the enemy, all fall at his feet. Okay? That's the first kind. The second kind I can identify with. The second kind is the man who's been cut down again and again and again. And each time he rises to battle on and he fights on, striving on. He says, I know not which is the greater hero. I know not which is the greater hero. So don't get discouraged if you've been cut down again and again and again and again and again. You may be the greater hero. Get up and fight for your declaration. Keep pushing for your declaration in spirit of your declaration. Now, Diana had a beautiful, beautiful message to share with us yesterday about the attitude of gratitude, positivity, mindset. I'm sure you were all as moved by her presentation as I. You know, one of the things that was really beautiful is that she said that if you win, you're happy, and if you lose, you're wise. Well, let me tell you, I'm a pretty wise guy. I've lost a lot, you know? I mean, I think if we go through life though, we get cut down and you stand up. But now here's an important element. And this is something that I feel like is a lot of people miss, because sometimes when we're afraid, we tend to want to rely on another person's recommendation and opinion and take it as law and just do it because that's what they said, right? So, happen to know a successful businessman, or maybe it's your dad or a relative who happens to have, more than you or have started a business. Well, what worked for them may not work for you. Yeah, there's wisdom in many counsels. We're to ask a lot, listen a lot, think a lot, and strategize. But ultimately, we have to take responsibility and have to act out of our own minds. And the reason for this is very, very simple, because if we don't, then when we do lose, then we'll be like, they told me to do the wrong thing, bummer. Instead, if we act out of our own reasoning, taking into consideration other people's opinions, absolutely, but we have to act out of what we feel in our hearts is the right thing to do, because according to our own minds, because then when we're wrong, praise God, now we know where we went wrong. We can figure out where we went wrong and we can learn from it. If we're constantly, there are some groups, especially like cult type groups, who are just slavishly obedient to whoever's in authority. No thought on their own. They're just robots implementing what they're told. That is not what we're supposed to do. That doesn't go in line with the declaration. A declaration has to be our purpose. It has to be our reason. It has to be our direction, with valuable input from others, but it has to be ours. We have to own it. Mindset is everything. So now, mindset is one of my favorite examples of mindset is the following. So how many of you have heard of intermittent fasting? Or so it's this whole idea of where you only eat during one short period of the day. The rest of the time you go without food at all, right? So you only eat, let's say, pick between 6 and 10 o'clock p.m. or whatever, and you only eat during that time. The rest of the time you allow your body to go into hunger mode or starvation mode or whatever, right? What that does in your body is it triggers what's called autophagy, which many of you may be familiar with. But basically what it does is it flushes out all the old and the weak or the vulnerable cells in your body and restores them and replaces them with healthy cells, okay? So it's a huge, deep detox. And so what it does with your mindset is, if you're dry fasting, okay, which I mean, if you're intermittent fasting, it changes the emotion behind the hunger, because before you're like, oh, I'm hungry, oh my goodness, right? But now I'm hungry. Yes, that means autophagy has started, and I'm like fixing up my organs, like I'm restoring the genetics and the health of my organs right now. That's what my body's doing. So because of that shift in your mindset, the hunger is not a burden anymore. It's something you feel, but it's not a problem. Same with dry fasting, which is like next level. It's where you don't even drink water during that whole period of time. You just drink water at the end of the day. And it does the same thing for your brain and your neurons as it does for the rest of the organs in your body. Try it. I mean, you'll be surprised. It's awesome. But anyways, I digress. So for years, I've really felt the image of storm rider is a really important image in my life, okay? Because here's the thing. Once we make our declaration, the world, the universe, life is going to try to disrupt our plans. Not because it's actually intentionally, but just because life is never how we expect it. And there's always struggle for self-betterment. There's always a struggle, right? But again, I think Diana was saying yesterday that you got to accept the conditions and move with it. So I always like to use the analogy for years that you have two options when the storm comes. You fight the waves and you risk getting pulled under in the undertow, or you ride the waves and you're surfing mavericks. So one of them, by moving with the storm and allowing it to propel you and to push you into a direction that perhaps you didn't foresee for yourself, that's when our true glory as individuals, as fathers or family men or women, obviously, or as entrepreneurs will really take. Because look, for example, at what we've seen with M Auto, right? What did they do? They saw all this pollution, they saw all this struggle and strife, and in fact, they came up against opinions who said, you guys don't know what you're doing. You're a fool. You're on the wrong path. All that tribulation, but he overcame it, focused on the vision, that declaration that he had made to make the world a better place, a cleaner place for all. So taking all of this and applying it and speaking a little bit more specifically about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in the post-COVID world, right? So first of all, I'm not really a huge fan of calling it the post-COVID world, just for the record, because I think that it's not going to be as different as our fear is telling us it will be right now. I think that in not too far a distant a future, I think we're going to be back to things much more as normal than we think. There are going to be certain changes, but it's not going to be as cataclysmic, I think, as we all, in our fear from our quarantine with our overgrown hair, we're thinking is the end of the world, right? So we have to accept, though, the circumstances that present themselves, right? As we were told already, we have to accept and adapt and understand them in the context of our declaration and what we're striving for in order to be able to map a process out to it. Another beautiful thing a wise mentor of mine told me years ago was, once you're on the right road, you know that this road eventually leads to where you want to go, more or less, right? How do you drive through fog? Have any of you had that experience of trying to drive through the fog, or being in a car that someone else is driving through the fog, and it's a really, really dense fog, and you can't see 6 feet in front of you? Okay, if you turn the brights on, because you're the I want to see, if you turn the brights on, the rays reflect off the fog and blind you. So what do you have to do? You have to turn your dimmers on and stay between the lines in the road. That's it. Just drive slow enough that you can stay between the lines in the road. So sometimes life is there's so many things out of our control, so many things that we couldn't possibly fathom or solve. And it's overwhelming, especially if we try to turn on the brights of our mind and consider everything and fix everything. We can't. We'll never be able to. So instead, all we need to do is dim the lights of our mind, focus on what I can get done today, focus on, as Steve was telling us yesterday, just the 3 things that I can do today. Make progress. Another mentor of mine currently says to me, the 1%ers, the top of the top people, they're not at the top of their game 98% of the time. Just like every day is they're just blowing through the world, conquering, right? They're better than they're not. They're having better days 51% of the time. And the other 49%, they're doing that minimum that they committed to doing. They're getting those 3 things done. Yeah, a lot of other days, 51% of the days, maybe they're getting 4 or 5 things done. But all those other days, they've committed to getting 3 things done a day, and they get 3 things done a day. So it's about that commitment, and it's about consistency. I think, as a tangent, I think Bruce Lee said, I don't fear the man who's done 1,000 kicks in one day. I fear the man who's done the same kick for 1,000 days. Consistency is huge. It's huge. So, another thing that Steve mentioned yesterday was that he talked about that victory garden. So I want to challenge each of you to have your own victory garden. Not in your backyard, not in your neighbor's backyard, okay? In your heart and in your mind, okay? Cultivate that victory garden where fruit is being born in your mind. So I woke up to deeper realities, if you will, more important truths when I was about 19 or 20 years old. Up until that point, I was a gamer. I spent so much time foolishly on video games, especially sports games. I was just all over the place. I spent so much money, and I spent so much time. And it occurred to me because and when I was 20, I entered a monastery, and I was surrounded by all these men who had spent their childhoods learning. And they're like, oh, Shakespeare. Oh, and it wasn't tough. It wasn't pompous like I'm making it seem right now. It was just genuine. They were pulling from their life experience. And I'm like, man, I don't even know what I mean, I heard of these people, but I don't even know what he's talking about. So that's when I started my own victory garden. And I started cultivating writing in myself. I started writing poetry. I started reading poetry. I started trying to become a richer, deeper human person with and cultivating that victory garden in my heart of knowledge and truth that I could share and bear with others. So think about what and where your victory garden could be. And again, going back to Michelle, pick a passion. We all have a passion. Find it. What is it? Because if you're working in your passion and according to your passion, you won't work a day in your life. You won't work a day in your life. I used to do property management. I managed 600 units on the north side of Chicago. And I worked every day. And then I decided to start my own business doing what I love, and I haven't worked a day since. So do what you love. So the fruit of some of that is the book that you guys will all get. It's me sharing my experience. You know, I lived overseas in Italy for a number of years, helping with non-for-profits, doing their marketing, their video production, web translating, all kinds of stuff, just various stuff to help these entrepreneurs and these non-for-profits you know, accomplish whatever their mission was, because I hadn't found mine yet. So I was just trying to help others find theirs while I was looking for mine. And so now as we look at how how the landscape has changed in business, I'm sure you're all aware that that everything in life is sales, if you really think about it. Not salesy, like the used car salesman that everybody uses as the example of why they don't like salespeople, right? But if you think about it, asking a girl to dance is a sales, you know? I mean, right, guys? I mean, you gotta have the guts to go over there. You've got to risk the no, and you've got to get the yes somehow, right? So I had a little trick, which I could tell you. I used to dance a lot, swing dance when I was a kid, ballroom dance. We would go to open dances, and I used to have a little trick. They can't say no if you never ask them, was my theory, okay? Just a little tangent. So I would just walk up with a smile and put my arm out. How do you say no to that? I mean, okay, all right, you know? So there's that sweetness of finesse, of respect. So I was always very respectful. But anyway, so when we look at how this pandemic and the current things have changed our current circumstances, and one of the things I'd like to talk about actually is something I'm personally really excited about. You know, I was really honored when a few months back, I think it was literally a few weeks or a month before the pandemic all started, our president went and visited yours in India, and the respectful welcome that you guys gave to him with such a great crowd to welcome him and embrace him. I think for a lot of Americans, not just for myself, it felt like a welcome to me from you guys. It was really a powerful thing for me to see, because I felt like in his person, you were welcoming me into your country. So I want to thank you for that, because I think it was a really beautiful thing. But I think what came from that will also be a beautiful thing for your country and for ours. I don't know if you've seen, so I have I won't say a source, a contact, someone I have access to I was aware long before just the last few days that despite all the negative news, this drug that keeps being talked about, pro and con, called hydroxychloroquine, is actually very, very effective, if not the cure for corona, okay? Now, CNN just yesterday got caught up and said, well, actually, all the reports we said were wrong. It actually turns out it's going to be a pretty good thing, right? Okay, but that aside, the reason I bring that up right now is because guess who is the largest, you probably know this, the largest producer of hydroxychloroquine in the world? Of course, India. The US has purchased 90% of the world's stores for the next 3 months of production, and much of that has been from India. I believe that the future economic explosion, we're already seeing it start here in the US, and it's coming very soon to India, especially because of this new relationship that we formed. As an aside note, I didn't plan on saying this, but it's something that I really feel, one of the things I love about this summit, and I want to take my hat off to Annie and Josh for organizing this once again. And I know that there's a whole team behind you guys, so all of you who are on the team, who I could see some of you on the screen here, no disrespect, I don't know your names, and hopefully I'll meet you someday, but so I use them to symbolize all of you. The beautiful thing is that you guys finished with your national anthem. I'd never heard it before, sadly. I'd never heard it, and I just love to hear it. After the first day, I looked up. I'm like, what do the words mean? What? So I went to the translation because I really love it, and I think that's where, and I think you guys get it. I think that the reason our president was so warmly welcomed is because he wants India to put India first. I want you guys to put India first, just like US puts US first. We want you guys to put you first and thrive and be a beautiful show. We don't have all of the rich cultural tradition that you do. It's beautiful. So thank you for your patriotism. It's really beautiful and it's really inspiring. Okay, so I believe, again, India is poised for enormous growth. What have we seen in sales? We started talking about sales. What have we seen in the sales world, even just over the last 50 years, okay? We're used to be that sales, the seller was in control, you know? Like, hey, I own the car dealership in the neighborhood. Where are they gonna go? Come here, we'll negotiate the price, and I can be hard with you because where are you going to go, right? In this digital world, which has only been accelerated by Corona, now the seller can just close that window. That guy's aggressive. Let me open in Google search and do this other. Let me get this other vendor. Let me do this other. So people can shop anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world through the technology that we have today. So kind of in a view of that shift, one of the things that, and Tatti, all of you, pardon me if I speak a little bit ahead of myself and ahead of ourselves, but in addition to the book, we're also going to be presenting, I just launched a e-learning website, and the website is called RCAD Academy. And if you don't know who RCAD is, look up The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a story of wealth building, and beautiful, set in the ancient world. And the gentleman's name who goes through this process is called RCAD. So and he builds his own business and his own passive income and his own wealth and legacy for his children. So that's the spirit of RCAD Academy. Now, if you go to arcadacademy.com, you'll see, and we'll you know, with Joshua and Annie, we're going to set up that I'd like to gift. There's a cost for the membership annually and monthly or whatever. I put together this website with about 140 other elite business coaches that I work with, and we compiled all these educational videos and created a course of education that will take you through a proven and true process to educate you and build and help you build a business according to your declaration, according to your mission. It'll help you put the pieces in a row. Now, working with these great guys over here at Tatti, we're going to be providing 5 one-year complimentary gift memberships as like a scholarship to 5 of you. So that'll be up to them who it goes to. I'm just saying here. So good luck to all of you. I hope you get it. But But anyway, so more on that later. But if you look at this, now we're more and more, as we know, all the Zoom meetings and everything, we're more and more technological in everything. So it becomes more and more important to understand how to maneuver ourselves and promote our businesses in the digital world, right? But wait, what is the effect? Now, if you stop and think, there's a silver lining to every cloud. That's one of the main silver linings to this corona pandemic that everyone is afraid of is community. So it may seem counterintuitive, but think about it for a second. Social media, texting, Zoom calls, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is, Instagram, whatever it is that's your preferred medium. For me, it's Twitter. I go crazy about Twitter. But when you're cut off now from your friends and you cannot shake their hands or share a drink or embrace them or see them face to face or hit them on the arm when you're joking with them, you miss it. And you start to realize the cheapness and the artificial nature of these social media communication. So it increases that desire for human interaction again. So I think as a byproduct, unintended by this whole corona pandemic, is people are like, man, Zoom calls are great because we could be there. But how cool would it all be if we could all huddle together for a group pick after this summit? How cool would it all be for us all to you know, for you guys to be able to be able to go up to Diana or to Steve or to Michelle after the talk and shake their hand and say, thank you for your words. Thank you. You just changed my life. Right? So there's wasn't it Shakespeare who said absence makes the heart grow fonder? So as we're now don't have our brothers and our sisters right next to us on our arm, now we miss it. So now as we come out of this pandemic, looking forward to the future, which again, I think will be much sooner than people expect, we're going to see that transformation, as Steve Godfrey said yesterday, one of my favorite lines, he said, transformation happens in the soil of community. So we're going to find that community, I mean, I think it started already with fathers are home from work, working from home. Kids are home from school. Fathers are with their children much more now. That relationship is being strengthened. Little things like that, you know? So relationships are going to be much, much more vital moving forward. Now, I love languages. It's one of my pastimes. I love different languages. I loved, even though I didn't understand it, I loved the first speaker's presentation because I loved to listen for nuances of relation. I studied with a bunch of people from India when I was studying in Rome, and they taught me to play some of your guys' card games and all. It was so much fun, right? It was so much fun to hear them speak too, because if you think about it, every language has its own unique, distinct thing, and you can hear it kind of coming through in the accents of different people who were speaking to us over the last few days. You know, like your language is very much forward to the front of the mouth. You know, it's very much on the tip of the tongue and the lips, right? The Michelle in Chinese is very much at the back of the throat and the back of the head. You know, English is all over the place. I don't know where we are. Probably coming out the top of our head somewhere. But so one of the things that I love about languages is if you look at, coming from a Romance language or Romance-related language, and speaking some of the Romance languages, I studied for a long time. I studied Latin and Greek, and I studied the grammatical peculiarities of Sanskrit, which is your parent language. And so what's interesting about it to me, and the one thing that I think is beautiful about Sanskrit, and I'll connect this back to what I was saying in a second, you'll get it, is so in English and Greek and German and Latin and Italian and everything, we have two cases, singular and plural. Sanskrit has singular, dual, and plural. Why is that important? Well, I think it betrays a psychology that's beautiful. Now, what do I mean? it shows an appreciation for community, for the intimacy of a union of two people. It's different when there's only two people than when there's a crowd. Two is company, what is it? Two's company, three's a crowd or something like that. I don't know how the saying goes, but so it's just really a beautiful reflection in your own language, many of you, of kind of that in its origins, at least, of that appreciation for relationship. So kind of, again, that community is the soil for that transformation, not only in our personal lives, not only in our family lives, not only in our businesses, but in our whole country and our world. One of my favorite authors, a 14th century author who lived in Siena, her name was Catherine. She has one of my all-time favorite quotes. And we're almost done here, but one of my all-time favorite quotes. Have the confidence to know that everyone that you meet can learn something from you, but have the humility to know that you can learn something from everyone else as well. So have the confidence in your own value that you bring to the world, to the business place, to the lives of those around you. You know, when I was younger, I had a mentor who was asking me, okay, yeah, to start, why don't you write a list of things that you're good at, qualities, and things that you're bad at, defects. It was much easier to write the list of defects because I hadn't yet come to see the value of who I was as a person and the value I could offer to the world. So one more time, I think it's so important. Have the confidence to know that everyone you meet can learn something from you, but have the humility to know that you can learn something from everyone else. So today, on this day after the celebration of the Declaration, I urge all of you to accept the current situation and with humility and confidence, set your sight on greatness. Make your declaration and join the struggle to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah, for that wonderful, very motivating and inspiring speech. Can you go for a couple of quick questions?
Absolutely.
The first question is, what were the measures that the US government took to help or protect its citizens during this COVID-19 pandemic?
So that's a good question. One of the unique things about the United States is that we're United States. So there's a lot of individual states with all their own individual governors, and the way that it should work is that they are primarily responsible for handling the pandemic and making the decisions for their own regions. And the President of the United States and the federal government is meant to facilitate the coordination between the states, the cooperation between the states, the union of the states, and the sharing of resources and supply chains and stuff that goes into interstate. So it's really important to understand that, because what's interesting when you look at, I don't know how closely you're following what's going on, some states have fared really, really well, even economically throughout the pandemic, had a very low like Florida, for example, had a very low outbreak compared to what was initially projected and expected. And then they've made a very quick rebound economically. Whereas other places like my state, unfortunately, Illinois, or California or Washington, for example, they don't, for whatever reason, the decisions of the governors were not as productive for or as well adapted for the situation, for whatever reason. So it kind of varies. It's a hard question to answer. I think that the current administration has done a fantastic job in assisting as its role to assist and empower the governors to do the best job that they can. So I think that was their goal and their role, and I think that was well done. So.
Thank you, Jeremiah. The next question is,
Sure.
what, according to you, are the most important skills today's youngsters should possess or improve in order to have a successful career?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think I would like to start just by saying that you need that humility and that confidence. And you know, Josh, as you were saying earlier today, you opened up the call by saying that you have to get out of your comfort zone. You know, nobody ever attained greatness in their comfort zone. I feel like the resilience and the ingenuity of the human person is incredible. It's incredible. And tap into that. Learn to understand and appreciate the gifts that you've been given. Find them. They're there. I promise you they're there. One of my, so I've mentored a number of people over my life. And you know, oftentimes I will just tell people the obvious strengths that I see that they have. I'm like, look, one of the things that I see you really bring to the group is this. Keep at it, trust that instinct and go with it because you're adding so much. And sometimes they cry because they're like, I didn't even know. How could you not know? It's brilliant, you know? So, but people need that. And I know, so you need to have people, you know, surround, you know, what they say is surround people, the 5 people closest to you will be your average income, your average whatever, right? I think that's important. Choose your friends wisely. But something concrete, I would say, shoot for consistency. Shoot for consistency. You know, even if it's just one kick a day, going back to the Bruce Lee analogy, you know, even if all you can do today, you know, is connect with 10 people on LinkedIn. That's all you can do. 10 people in the industry that you're trying to get into, just 10 people in LinkedIn. That's all you have time for, but just consistently do that. Just something small like that, whatever it is, to work towards your goal, but consistency. So 3 words to take away, just to summarize, to make it simple. Consistency, humility, confidence. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Jeremiah. One last question. What do you think are going to be the future jobs post-COVID-19? And what do you think are some of the industries which will be suitable for business opportunities in the near future?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, so I would say a couple of things, because remember, this world is a dynamic, changing reality, right? So when we get stuck in a box, you know, I helped one company earlier this year. They had a marketing company, and they do a lot of online ads marketing campaigns for people and things like that. And they started losing a lot of clients right when the COVID hit. And so I helped them adapt their whole business model and develop some new tools and strategies to recapture those old business. So in other words, it's important to be adaptable. It's important to change with the times. So now that being said, we're seeing an initial digital emphasis right now, but we need to be adaptable, because if you remember what we were saying earlier, that once everything is unlocked, once the lockdown is officially unlocked, then, you know, it may not be right away, but it'll be shortly thereafter. People are starving for palm to palm embracing. People are starving for face to face. So just make sure that when you're building your business, make sure that you're always, keep your head on a swivel, that you're always ready to adapt and move with the storm, wherever that storm takes us, whatever the next storm might be. And then lastly, I would say that no, I don't think that any business fails. And this goes back to what Lee was saying from Disney earlier this week. He was saying that he was talking about the importance of relationship. And just like Steve was saying that yesterday, but if our business is built on relationship, and then, you know, whatever storms may come, we can pivot. We can go from Zoom to in person because I have the relationship. And that's where, like, just that one consistent thing of 10 LinkedIn requests a day is building relationship, you know, at least leaving the door open for it. So, yeah, I mean, I would just say be flexible moving forward. But I do believe that we're poised for an explosive growth from some of the information sources that some of the information that I'm receiving is saying that actually we're on the cusp of a economic boom and transformation over the next 8 to 12 months that for not only for the US, but for many other countries in the world, and I think India is one of the primary ones involved in that, it's going to be exciting. I think these next few years are going to be talked about for generations because of the global economic explosion and impact. I'm a hopeless optimist, but I don't think that this is hopeless optimism. I think this is realistic because if you see what's going on and how charged people are to make the world a better place right now, it's pretty fantastic. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer. I hope it kind of answered the question. I know that it wasn't perhaps the most direct answer, but I think you'll find something there to take away.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah, for taking part and sharing your valuable thoughts with us today. It was wonderful to have you, and thank you for patiently answering all our questions too. So we are sharing your book details, the book link for everybody to download with all the participants who are taking part. Even to all the participants who are here today. Today we have 300 plus participants. We are sharing it with all of them.
Yes. So
would you like to say a quick word about the book, please?
Well, so in the book, what I'm basically, every business lives or dies by cash flow is kind of going down to more technical, rudimentary nuts and bolts of it. Some of the best, most wonderful companies in the world went bottom up because they lost their cash flow. So the book is basically designed towards, the first 8 chapters are all talking about different strategies that one can implement to build and promote their business, even if they're building it from zero as an entrepreneur, like many of you will be, those 8 strategies are ways to increase cash flow, either by selling strategies of selling more products or different kinds of products or different strategies for optimizing sales. But then the last chapter is a chapter that's really special to me. But unfortunately, it's primarily a US thing. So if you guys have business in the US or some of you have locations in the US, it just deals with the implementation of a software and a way to lower expenses through taxes, intelligence and tax managing of your taxes, etc. So those are all really interesting things. But I think in general, especially the first 8 chapters for you guys can be implemented anywhere in the world, and it's very focused on creative selling, respecting the change in the whole sales environment. So, and then just one last point. I for the first time this whole summit, I'm going to have to leave a little early. Josh and Annie already are aware of this, but so I'm going to miss the beautiful national anthem today. So maybe I'll Spotify it on the way to my next meeting. But anyway, so I really have appreciated getting to know all of you and your culture a little more in depth by some of the businesses that were being talked about. I'm already looking at plane flights to Mumbai and seeing if I can make an agricultural visit. So we'll see. But anyways, it's just been a really beautiful experience to be with all of you, and I look forward to your feedback on the book, and I hope you enjoy it and it helps contribute to your success. And it's something that I believe all not just people who are here on this call, but all members affiliated to Tatti, all who've come through, are all welcome to a copy of the book. And then stay tuned with Joshua and Annie for news on the scholarships to the e-learning site. So thanks again for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.